Shalom, everyone, and welcome to my channel, Truth in Biblical Research, also known as Tibber. And to those that are celebrating Pesach, Passover, this week, happy Passover. On this channel, we dig through the original text of Scripture so we can show ourselves, so we can study to show ourselves approved unto Elohim, rightly dividing the word of truth. To be sure to like, be sure to like, subscribe, and share the video on the buttons down here to make sure you get all of my videos. Hit the notification bell for all. If you're watching on your phone, it'll be on this corner. If you're watching on a laptop or a desktop, it'll be down over here. Today we are going to be looking at the sign on the cross, and what is the significance of that sign. And the sign is mentioned in John 19:19. It's also mentioned in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, but partially. John is the only place where the full message was recorded. So we're going to go through John 19:19. I'm going to start off with King James, and then we're going to go from there. King James says, "And Pilate wrote a title and put it on the cross. And the writing was, Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews." So my question is, why did the Pharisees plead with Pilate to change the sign on the cross? That's mentioned a couple verses later, that they see the sign that he wrote, and they tell him, no, don't write that. Change it to, he said, I am the King of the Jews. And obviously that would change that message more ways than one, and we'll go into that in a little bit here. So Christians have, or Catholics mostly, have the image of the cross, and then something that looks like a scroll on top of the cross. It says INRI, or INRI. That is actually the acronym of this sign that was on the cross. That's mentioned in John 19, but the acronym in Latin. IESUS. Hold on a second. Let me pull that up. IESUS Nazarenus Rex Judaeorum. INRI. That's where that comes from. Were they upset about that? My point that I'm going to make here is, let's delve into who spoke Latin first. So who spoke Latin? First, who was in the country at that time? Well, you got the Romans, which consisted of mostly centurions and members of the imperial state. First century Hebrew, usually the first century Hebrew was Southern Aramaic, also known as Judean Aramaic, spoken by the Judeans. First century Aramaic, which is actually the Northern Aramaic, also known as Galilean Aramaic, which was spoken by both Samaritans and Galileans. And then you got Greek. There wasn't anybody in the country that was Greek, but it was spoken in the first century Common Era as a leftover language from the Alexandrian and Seleucid empires, and was used as a language of commerce. So, the three languages on the sign were the native language, the language of commerce, and the language of the empire. So, if the Pharisees are upset about what it says, wouldn't they be upset what it says in their native language? So what it says in Latin means nothing. It doesn't mean anything. You can look it up. You can look up INRI. Does INRI spell anything in Latin? No, it doesn't. It doesn't spell anything. So what significance does that have? Nothing. So what they're upset about isn't about the Latin, isn't about the Greek. They're upset about what it says in Hebrew. Second, what did the Pharisees speak? The language they spoke would be dictated by where they lived and by what job they had. Galileans would speak Aramaic and would have trade jobs, like, for instance, carpenters, fishermen, jobs of that sort. Pharisees, Sadducees, and Judeans lived in Judea and spoke Hebrew. Pharisees and Sadducees lived close to the temple, so they spoke Biblical Hebrew. Mostly Biblical Hebrew was used at that time for liturgical purposes, and the lingua franca Hebrew of most Judeans was Southern Aramaic, also known as Judean Aramaic. There are a few mentions of jobs of the Judeans, but of those that are mentioned are tax collectors, educators in Torah, and merchants. So a vast difference in jobs, and a difference in the dialect that was spoken. So, number 3, since they were worried about what was written in Hebrew, what was it and what was the issue with it? So, let me show you something. This is what the message said in Hebrew, and says right here, the transliteration, Yeshua HaNatzri Umelech HaYehudim. In the translation, Yeshua the Nazarene and King of the Jews. Notice the red letters. The first letter in each word spells the acrostic. The 4 letters in red spell out the Tetragrammaton, also known as a 4-lettered name of God. And I have it right here. That's the 4-lettered name of God. Yod, He, Vav, He. So that's the message that was on the sign in Hebrew. And this is the problem that they had. The Pharisees taught that this name was never to be written, and instead to be replaced by either Adonai, Elohim, or Hashem. Adonai is Aramaic for the Southern Aramaic dialect for master or Lord. In Hebrew, it means my master, because this part of it right here is the my, and Adon is master. Elohim is God. Hashem means the name. It's referring to this Tetragrammaton, the name. There are appropriate times and places that these 3 names are used. However, if it replaces the Tetragrammaton, that's doing the Father a disservice. This sign is also mentioned in Matthew 27:37, Mark 15:26, and Luke 23:38, but not in full, like it was recorded in John. The sign is declaring that Yeshua is Yehovah. Pharisees saw that as blasphemous because the name isn't supposed to be written, even if it's in an acrostic format or spoken according to their oral law. Oral law commentary regarding this is still being practiced by rabbinical Jews, not just ultra-Orthodox, but even the Reform and humanistic sects. The Tetragrammaton is Yod He Vav He, as I showed you before, and the meaning of his name, the Father's name, is he perpetually exists. Let me show you that. Okay, trying to get my cursor in the right place. This right here this vowel point indicates that this letter is not part of the root. It is a prefix to the root. This is the root. The root is ho and hey vav hey, and it means to be or to exist. This is a prefix and acts as a possessive. That's where the he comes from. And when the yod is in front of the root, it also acts as a perpetual. So this is the perpetuality. So it always was in the past and always will be in the future. So the vowel point here is very crucial. Also, keeping this as a cholam is important. The cholam is the O sound of the vav. This is very crucial, even though that the root word is ho, hey, vav, cholam, hey, even though that the root word is ho, keeping it as that works in conjunction with the perpetuality. If you change this vav cholam to what's known as a vav sharuk, which would bring this dot up here, down here, it actually changes this portion into a past tense, which doesn't make any sense in Hebrew, because then you have perpetual followed by past tense. And that is something that doesn't make any sense grammatically in Hebrew. So you're saying that he perpetually existed. And perpetuality and the past tense, they can't be in the same word. You will never have a perpetual followed by a finished participle, which would be the vav sharuk. Those that believe that the name is pronounced as Yahuwah or Yahuwah, they are taking the perpetual aspect out, because they're taking the shva out, replacing that with a different vowel point. And then they're changing this cholam, which is a continual tense, into a finished tense. So they're changing what his name means to be from he perpetually exists to Yah existed, which is a lie, because that would mean that he existed in the past but doesn't exist anymore, and that doesn't jive at all. But anyway, so in short, that is the message on the cross. in Hebrew. And I hope that has helped you in understanding this portion of John 19, since this happened on Passover itself. I wanted to do a Passover related video. Thank you for viewing my video, and Sha'alu Shalom Jerusalem. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. May they prosper who love you. Again, that's Psalm 122:6. See you next time.